than 4 months working on the Oswald diary, putting it through microscopic scrutiny before she arrived at her evaluation.
This is not a spontaneous writing. It is written very slowly and deliberately. One could assume that possibly Oswald copied excerpts from his original diary, which were given to him by some representative of Soviet intelligence, and that he then wrote very slowly in order to comply with the demands. However, here and there one can see that he gets irritated, and especially at the end of the pages, he frequently gets quite fatigued.
Mrs. Lewinson believes that fatigue in Oswald's writing, as shown here by lines that gradually run downhill, indicates that the complete diary was written in 2 or 3 sessions rather than day by day.
I think that Oswald was supervised by Soviet intelligence in order to mislead the Americans at his return to the United States.
Edward Epstein.
When I went through Lee Harvey Oswald's diary, I found 2 anachronisms, 2 things that were out of date. One was on October 31st, where he talked about the American consul, McVicker, who wasn't yet the consul for another year. The second thing was he talked about rubles in terms of old rubles that were 10 for $1 rather than new rubles that were 1 for $1. This was not a genuine diary. It was a fake. It was written after the fact to give Lee Harvey Oswald a legend so he could explain to the FBI and other people in America what he was doing in Russia for 2 years, what he was supposed to be doing in Russia, not what he was doing.
If Oswald's diary is in fact a fake, and if Nosenko only defected to mislead the Americans, it leads one to ask, what were the Russians trying to hide? What happened to Oswald during his stay in the Soviet Union that the Russians don't want us to know about? Could there have been a plot so bizarre no one would have dared thought it possible? On November 24th, 1963, medical examiners began an autopsy on the individual they assumed to be Lee Harvey Oswald. It is recreated here for In Search Of. Their findings were to create a public controversy that would surface 15 years later, when British lawyer, author, and investigator Michael Eddowes made public the results of his investigation of Lee Harvey Oswald.
This is the most terrifying story you will ever hear, and the Russians don't want you to hear about it. The man who killed President Kennedy was not Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a Soviet lookalike whose first name was Alec, and who came to the United States as a member of the KGB assassination squad for the direct purpose of killing President Kennedy.
Eddowes says that the Dallas autopsy was performed on an imposter and points to a number of inconsistencies to prove his point.
The man who went to Russia was 5 feet 11 in height. There's no question about this. There are 11 recordings of this height. The length of the corpse of the assassin was 5 feet 9.
External examination reveals a 5'9" white male.
The autopsy report records only 2 scars on the upper left arm of the assassin.
Over the left arm, there's a 1/4-inch transverse scar and a 1 1/4-inch scar.
Got it.
Whereas the real Oswald had 3 scars on the upper left arm. The autopsy report records a large scar on the inner aspect of the left wrist. The real Oswald had no such scar. At the age of 6, the real Oswald had a mastoidectomy operation, which left a 1-inch long scar behind his left ear.